Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey everybody, this is the Digital Asset Investor, and I think I messed up on where I'm starting. Right here. I wanted you to listen to this. This is the Kenyan president. Listen to what he says.
Selling to Kenya, or traders from Kenya selling to Djibouti, have to look for US dollars. How is US dollars part of the trade between Djibouti and Kenya? Why? And we are saying that today, Afri-Exim Bank have given us a mechanism where traders in our continent can trade in their goods and services, and the Africa-Exim Bank will settle payments in local currency. That is why Kenya champions the Pan-African payment and settlement system that is done by our own institution, the Afri-Exim Bank. Why, members? Why is it necessary for us to buy things from Djibouti and pay in dollars? Why? There is no reason. And we are not against the US dollar. We just want to trade much more freely. Let us pay in US dollars what we are buying from the US. But what we are buying from Djibouti, let's use local currency.
And who can really argue with that? I mean, the monopoly that the U.S. has had on with the dollar all around the world, who blames these people for being upset with this? And then you've got this. Robert Kiyosaki, who is Rich Dad, Poor Dad, more banks about to fail. Rumor is mortgage giant Loan Depot is on the ropes. Regional banks and mortgage companies are falling. Please be careful. I would not believe anything President Biden, Federal Chairman Powell, or Secretary Treasury Yellen say. I have to agree with him. Folks, this is part of the reason Glint's my sponsor, and they're still doing their summer they're giving me this referral code DAIV50. You get 50% off vaulting and insurance fees for the next 12 months. Those are for new accounts. The code's valid until the 14th of July 2023. The link's in the top of the description. Now, John Deaton on his Crypto Law channel had Jeremy Hogan, the attorney Mark Fagel, who used to be with the SEC. I think that's his name. And then he had Rosalind Layton's attorney. I'm drawing a blank on the guy's name right now. Another day. But anyway, there's a few clips that we've had storms in this area. Normally, I would have gone in and I would have clipped out all kinds of video from John's thing and put those out there, but the power went out here. We're dealing with some tornadoes and major storms in this part of the country, and they're still going on today. And so my power had gone out, so I took the kids out for pizza. What else do you do when the power goes out? So I couldn't sit here and record all the things. I watched what John Deaton was saying and all, but because I had my phone out, but I couldn't record, and I wasn't set up to do it. But Digital Perspectives, Brad Combs did do some recordings, and so I'm going to show you what he recorded. Watch this.
There's no big bombshells that we're seeing in these emails. There's nothing that jumps out at you saying, ha-ha, Ripple's going to win, or ha-ha, the SEC is going to lose. There's nothing in these emails that screams that out. There's no, we were kind of thinking maybe there would be someone in the email that would have said, hey, what about XRP? It's just like Ether. Why aren't we including that in our analysis? So we don't get anything like that in the emails. I think when I first read the emails, the first thing that jumped out to me was that I got this feeling that it's really bad for Hinman of all the people involved. It's obvious that he was pushing the Ether free pass which had just been some conjecture on Twitter up to this point. And then we really see in these emails that right from the get-go, he even named, like, the title of his first email was, the Ether speech. And right from the get-go, he's saying Ether is not a security, and that was the point of him making the speech. And you got to think, well, why did he have to use Ether as an example? Why couldn't he just say once an asset reaches a certain level of decentralization, then it's no longer security? Why did he have to use Ether? And I think what I came away from reading the emails was, wow, there really was something going on here. And I'm really focused on the case, but I think if I was, William Hinman, I'd be more concerned about these emails than maybe if I was the SEC.
I tell you what, I watched this Mark Fagel guy, and I don't think Mark Fagel, my impression from watching the whole thing is, I don't think he was well, first of all, he didn't want to go anywhere near the Hinman thing. That was, I think that my impression is not that he said anything, but my impression was that he knew there was smoke coming off of the Hinman thing, and he didn't want to go there. My impression was also that he is not adamant that the SEC is going to win this thing either. But here's another clip from this.
Really appreciate your input, because at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is just kind of inform people that hold XRP that don't have legal background what's going on, what to expect. And sometimes we get it wrong, sometimes we get it right, but we really appreciate your input for sure. I think, and I disagree a little bit with you, Mark, as far as, how these emails could be used, because to me, I see a lot of fodder in here at trial, if it does go to trial maybe next year, maybe early 2025, because I think what you're seeing is evidence that's going to be used as to what when you have the regulators themselves having these discussions. I know that's how the SEC operates, but when you can get that information in front of a jury and you can say, look, Ripple's being charged with, breaking the law, they're horrible people, look at what they did. And then you see that the SEC, the regulators themselves, were also having some confusion, also arguing over what these things mean. I guess for me, when I go to trial, and I'm in the middle of one right now, but I see myself as a lawyer, my job is to make my client look good and to make the other guy look bad. And I think these emails could be used not so much to make the other guy look bad, but certainly to paint the picture of an SEC that was as confused as Ripple was. And I think if you can get that in front of a jury, not so much a judge maybe, but in front of a jury, I think you could definitely use these emails to paint a fair notice defense. And I know that it hasn't been a particularly strong defense in the past, but this isn't just a defendant who's coming in saying, well, I didn't know what the law was, therefore don't find me guilty. The SEC has done a lot of affirmative things with the FinCEN settlement and all of the guidance that they gave, and some of the contradictory guidance, because now they've backed off, I think, this William Hinman speech to an extent. But I think with all of the affirmative things that the SEC has done, I think if you can get this all in front of a jury, I think you have a good shot at the fair notice defense.
Okay, and then Fred Rispoli, who's also an attorney, I met him at XRP Las Vegas. He went on to Thinking Crypto's show to weigh in on the Hinman emails as well.
Up until yesterday, when these emails came out, I was putting
before I show that, I want to say also, a discussion towards the end of this came up about if this went to trial. And even the guy from the SEC, you could tell the way he was talking that he thought that the SEC he even came out and said the SEC does not do well in trial in this type of a situation. And you could tell that, that's why I think that the SEC does not want to go to trial. But I think my understanding, I'm not an attorney, but my understanding is that the judge could order it to trial, or order part of it to go to trial. And I think all of them pretty much thought if it goes to trial, Ripple, because then you have to explain it in front of what I guess normally would be a common sense group of people instead of just the opinion of one judge. And in that scenario, the SEC should get their butts kicked. Now watch this.
complete total Ripple victory at like 10%. I think they're
start at the beginning.
Up until yesterday when these emails came out, I was putting a complete total Ripple victory at like 10%. I think they're going to win on XRP is not a security. I think there's going to be, the judge is going to address XRP secondary sales in a way that's not everything that the secondary market like XRP holders and users want, but I think is going to be good enough. I was thinking that she's going to say, listen, there's no contracts, there's no post-sale obligations, but maybe with all these documents that Ripple, said and sold XRP or other kind of wink, wink, nod, nod agreements, a jury could consider those investment contracts. So we'll let a judge we'll let a jury decide. I'm just bumping it up a little bit for a total win in my view to probably maybe 20%, because I think when you've got some of these tough questions and there's a high likelihood of appeal by either side, when you've got a party that's just not credible, not acting in good faith, and especially when that party is the government, you're just more inclined to come down against them on any of these types of questions as a judge. And I've seen that happen many, many times in my career. That's why I'd rather immediately say, this isn't a strong argument, judge, but I have to make it. And so the judge understands why I have to do that. And, that's what I think is happening here. So I think that there's more of a chance that there's an outright Ripple win because, again, Judge Torres looked at this. She's seen these emails. She's seen that the SEC doesn't know what's going on. And I think that gives it a bigger chance to say, you know what, they don't deserve to win this. They can appeal my ruling if they want, but I think there's a bigger chance than I thought before.
Okay, Ripple for the win. So now, folks, listen closely to me. I was there when we first started to uncover ETHgate. I was here when we started to see the FTX thing unravel. And I'm not even addressing the fraudulent part of the FTX thing. What I'm talking about is the government involvement in both. I still say that the government was behind or a part of creating FTX. I believe that. But let me tell you what, and in both cases, the government was all in it. And they were literally creating these, my impression is they were creating these, they were propping up these chosen things in order to go after the other parts of the industry and to create a situation where they could mold the industry through these organizations. That was my impression of what they were trying to do. In the case of Ethereum, they were trying to create a monopoly that they could all control. In the case of FTX, they were trying to, I think, based on what BitBoy said at one time, he said that FTX was being used to destroy things like Luna, and I never heard him follow up with that, but it made sense when we were seeing everything unfolding. Now, enter Prometheum. And I don't know anything about Prometheum. We're just getting started here with this thread right here, okay? But I'm getting the EBGBs here, okay? I'm getting the same freaking feeling about the government being somehow involved here. I don't know for a fact yet, but we're going to go through it. This is yet when they had the hearings the other day. The CEO Aaron Kaplan from Prometheum was there, and this guy starts. And I'm going to go further into it in my next video because I don't want this one to go too long. But I'm going to lay the foundation here, and then we'll go. And I encourage everybody listening to my voice to dig and look at what this company is doing. Not because this company is doing anything nefarious. I'm not saying that. I want to know about where's the government involved in helping them along on this, because what's being said doesn't make any sense. This guy is Matt Walsh, okay? He's general partner at Castle Island Ventures, and he says, This Prometheum storyline has got to be the strangest thing I've seen in a while in this industry. Has anyone actually looked into this? Beyond bizarre. And he even gave me a thumbnail. Look at that. Beyond bizarre. Okay. I got storms going on out here, by the way, and I'm hoping it doesn't kick my power out again, but we'll see. Here's what I'm going to do. Just go ahead and tell you. If my power gets kicked off, I'll just end the video at that point, and then we'll pick it back up in the next one. He says, last month, in the midst of the SEC bringing cases on Coinbase, Gemini, and giving the stiff arm to Robinhood and others, Prometheum gets approval for the first of its kind special purpose broker dealer for digital asset securities. Then Prometheum's CEO somehow gets a seat in front of Congress yesterday and starts reading off pre-written notes, clearly coordinating narratives with Democratic members of Congress. This must be I don't know who that is. But anyway, so he's retweeting this, and then he says, who's this? As this is apparently an attorney. As they point out, this ATS absolutely will not work unless the projects first register the tokens with the SEC. There are currently no tokens registered with the SEC because the current regime is not viable for public blockchain networks. Then he goes on. U.S. Representative Mike Flood hit the nail on the head on why Prometheum's claims are utter nonsense. Now, you got to watch this 4 minutes and 18 seconds, and we'll end it there. But first, I want to read the rest of this. He says, the Prometheum guys want us to believe that all L1s are securities and will need to come in and trade on Prometheum. Not happening, but enter Prometheum chain. What is that you say? These guys have their own chain. Yes, and a token right here. Well, that's just PPT slide. They surely won't do a token wrong. They already pre-sold some Wang Zhang and others. Is that really the name of their token? Who is Wang Zhang? Someone might want to look into this one. CCP affiliate, WTF. According to PitchBook, Prometheum has raised $48.19 million. Like all private companies, they're required to file a Form D. They raised, oddly, even in their early rounds, they used an investment bank to raise capital. Very rare for venture-backed startups at the early stage. They've paid in excess of $1.5 million in sales commissions to New Jersey-based outfit called Network One Financial Securities. Network One Financial Securities has quite the regulatory track record. 18 regulatory events. Then they said, and who's running Prometheum? Martin Kaplan. Aaron Kaplan is the CEO, his son, I guess. Benjamin Kaplan. They're all attorneys at this Gus Ray Kaplan law firm. The Kaplans are being held up as security law experts. Two of them went to a now unaccredited law school. Other companies like Coinbase and Gemini have pursued BDATS paths. These licenses under current SEC regs don't let you do much. The SEC is implying that the Prometheum path solves the regulatory clarity issues. It doesn't. What is going on here? Bizarre that this fringe player with no biz model is being held up as an example of compliance. Well, how was FTX was held up and then crashed and taken down and then used as an example of why this industry is fraudulent and crypto's bad and all of that. And that's why smoke's rising here, and that's why the red flags are going off for me. I'm going to finish by playing you some of this, which is the Mike Flood calling this guy out.
Cool. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes. I'd like to start by to read a question from a comment letter that Prometheum sent in response to the SEC's December 2020 special purpose broker-dealer framework. Quote, the definition of a digital asset security as used in the proposal is a digital asset that meets the definition of a security under the federal securities laws. This definition puts a burden on the industry to determine which digital assets are securities. As a result, we believe the clarity is needed to understand the regulatory framework they must comply with, end quote. That was in a letter dated April 26 from Prometheum, specifically signed by Benjamin S. Kaplan, co-CEO of the company. I offer this into the record without objection. This concern, which Prometheum themselves raised in 2020, probably sounds familiar for those who track this committee closely. It is the exact same concern we've heard from witnesses in front of this committee before. How can a broker-dealer register if they don't know which assets are a security and which are not? Further, it makes the same argument that other firms have made, that the lack of clarity from the SEC puts an undue burden on the industry. Mr. Kaplan, in your testimony, you were very confident that no new legislation is needed in the digital asset space to clarify this question. What has changed between the date of this letter in 2021 and when your firm called for clarity and now? What has changed?
Over the 2+ years since that time, there's been additional enforcement actions and statement by the SECs, which have clarified any questions that we had in regards to the designation of a digital asset as a security.
Mr. Kaplan, Prometheum's website says that Prometheum ATS supports, quote, many tokens that mostly trade on crypto exchanges, end quote. I'd like to dig in on that just a little bit. Can Prometheum customers trade in Ether? If your answer is yes, please explain how.
Not currently.
Can Prometheum customers trade in Bitcoin? If your answer is yes, please explain how.
No.
Just for the audience at home's benefit, Ether and Bitcoin make up more than 60% of the digital asset market. Mr. Kaplan, given that either Ether and Bitcoin make up more than 60% of the digital asset market, if the current system is working, why can't your customers trade the most popular and widely used digital assets?
Regulation and new ATSs and custodians should take a crawl, walk, run approach, and essentially they will proceed to add additional assets and abilities as time goes on. I'd like to point out when the... I'm
going to reclaim my time. Mr. Kaplan, did Prometheum receive any additional exemptive relief from the SEC that has not been publicly shared?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Kaplan. Prometheum's special purpose broker-dealer license does not address the core issue. There is not a consistent definition of a digital asset security within current law. This point was made obvious when Chair Gensler could not say definitively whether Ether is a digital asset security when asked by Chairman McHenry in this very room a couple months ago. In other words, that same question that Prometheum themselves raised in their 2021 comment letter is still unanswered. That's why legislation is needed. That's the problem that the chairman's bill works to solve. To testify in front of our committee that your company's charter, which only allows for trading in a very small subset of assets, is evidence that no legislation is needed, just doesn't make sense. If anything, the fact that Prometheum's customers cannot trade some of the most popular digital assets is an illustration of the broader problem, Mr. Kaplan. I yield back.
This thing reeks of a company who's being used by the SEC and Gary Gensler as a tool. That's why we're going to dig right here. We're going to dig big time. I've already dug and I've got some stuff and I'm going to show it to you in the next video. I'm the digital asset investor. I'm not an investment advisor. This is for entertainment purposes only. Please subscribe, hit the like button. Tell your friends and family that my spidey senses are at work this morning.